Just super quick on really on the operationalization of this, I guess, is there any, how's that going to be done, I guess, to some extent? Because, I mean, other things are serialized, there's ways to track things. Is there any plan to do that? It's just basically, if it's tied to a piece of legislation or a criminal code and you're finding that, for lack of better terms, the illegal firearm, where somebody's not allowed to do it, if they're in possession of these parts and they don't have the appropriate PAL or RPAL, depending on the firearm type we're talking about, basically that's how the charge would be laid. Is that sort of how it's going to be operationalized?
Thank you for the question. So the question is that in future motions you are going to see that it's going to require a PAL in order to acquire or import a firearm part as defined, but the possession, like ammunition, is not going to be criminalized.
Mr. Ruff,
I just want to make sure if I heard Ms. Tamoff correct. Did you say
Demoff,
that?
it's not Pamoff. Pam's my first name.
Sorry, Pam. That you said that the majority of hunting firearms are rimfire? Is that what you said?
The most commonly found in hunting firearms.
Incorrect. That's fine.
Mr. Ruff, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I got a couple things, and it's more for the parliamentary secretary, so I don't mess up her name. In your opening remarks, you made a couple of caveats or comments. The majority of Canadians support this definition. You talked about the consultation process. So two questions really for her is, how do you know this? Do we have any data or evidence that the majority of Canadians, like, could we get that tabled here so we understand where that evidence is? And again, across Canada, it's something I did ask the minister privately or one-on-one last Friday, I believe it was, when I was here at committee, because the consultation process that he's taken since the previous G4 was tabled, he said he went wide and across the country. And do we have could we get the government to provide the committee a list of where he went, who he saw? Because I'm not aware of him having visited one conservative riding. So again, I don't want to be partisan here. I'm just trying to understand if we're only getting the consultations only impacting some Canadians. So that's my first question for the parliamentary secretary, tied to, what the logic behind this amendment.
Members of the committee aren't here to answer questions. They might be able to. She may answer if she wishes, but you might want to respond or ask the officials these questions.
Well, I can ask the officials if they have the information if she doesn't want to answer.
Well, she may if she wishes,
no,
but
it's a straightforward,
it's really
friendly
not
question.
It's not the role of the members of the committee to provide evidence to the committee, right?
No. I'll ask the officials, maybe public safety or with the firearms program, because obviously that's where some of this was built from, do we have a list of all the different places the minister went and who he consulted with over the last number of months?
I would invite you to pose that question to the minister.
Well, I could ask them. All right, so you don't have that information?
Not with me, no.
All right, I guess tied to this with the consultation of this definition to the officials that helped drafted this were manufacturers consulted at all?
So there were broad discussions, engagements that were done. I'm here to support the review of the motion and the bill. I'm not here, so I would invite you again to pose those questions to the minister.
All right.
Mr. Ruff, Ms. Demoff will respond if you wish.
Thank you.
So first off, the question should be directed to the minister, not to me. I'm not here to answer questions, but you asked where does it come from. Every poll that I've ever seen, so I'll quote you one. Ipsos did a poll, 8 and 10, 82% Canadians support federal government's ban on military-style assault weapons, done on the 28th of May, 2020. It's available on their website, so you can check that. And I'll just leave it at that. It's public polling, so it's available for anyone who wants to look for it.
Just to get that, you said 2020?
That's one that I have found. It's been consistent, though, Mr. Ruff.
So that's fine.
It has been consistent for years. You asked if there was actually polling that was done. I've given you one. You can take a look, and I would suspect the numbers have not changed very much from 2020 to 2023.
My question was around this definition. We're talking about this definition. Military-style assault rifles is not this definition. This is redefining what a prohibited firearm is. The definition specifically speaks to what was discussed and brought forward under G4, now withdrawn, rightfully so. We now have a new definition for prohibited firearm based on, as the minister announced yesterday, and as these amendments that were moved today by yourself, and I'm just asking for the consultation because that's exactly what you stated. So that's fine. We don't have it. I just sort of wanted to get that clarified, and specifically back to the officials. If I heard correctly, there's no, from understanding from the officials' perspective, manufacturers themselves. I'm just trying to. They're the ones that are directly impacted by this, because this is a new definition, an amendment going forward for future firearms, not historical firearms. So therefore, I'm just trying to understand that whether or not they were consulted, because they're the ones that are ultimately, we have firearms manufacturers, and again, they're not bad people. They're just producing a tool for hunters and sport shooters, etc. And just trying to seek the clarity there of whether or not they were involved at all in the consultation process of this, coming up with this definition.
So I would refer you back to the announcement yesterday, which talked about the announcement follows engagement with Canadians across the country, and it lists the different types of groups and stakeholders that were engaged with during the consultation, during the intervening period.
All right, I'll leave that at that, Chair. To go just again, some of the questions, I mean, Ms. Dancho did a great analogy of talking about vehicles, but again, I'm just concerned about going forward. So if we take, for example, say the Browning hunting rifle Mark II or Mark III that was caught up under the previous G4 is no longer caught up in this, but if it was to be remanufactured to the same specs in the future, right? So the Browning produces more of these hunting rifles. They will not be captured under this, because they were originally, no matter what they were designed for, how they were originally designed for, tied to magazine capacity, historically, they're not part of this. This is just for future firearms only.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Look, I have a couple very quick points. So I know Mr. Julian's raised the concerns about, the debate that's ongoing and how long it's going to take, specifically because of his concerns around the increased threat across this nation with respect to ghost guns. And I fully agree, and I think that's why you saw unanimous support at the motion that we just passed. So my question to the officials, there is nothing preventing the current government from prohibiting and taking what is in this legislation tied to ghost guns and passing that through regulation tomorrow, is there?
So there's certain provisions or measures that are being proposed in here that are ones that need to be based in law. They're not ones that are to be included in regulations, because you either need the regulation making authority to do so in terms of taking those regulatory actions. So some of them are actually are necessary as part of the bill, if that's the government and the legislature's intent.
Gotcha. So, and that's a fair response. I respect that. There's aspects of it that do require legislative change. So, and my second point more goes to, the discussion of why, there is some concerns and confusion around here. I know we already challenged you, Chair, on the scope of this, but it goes to the question around the tech briefing. And I just want it clear so all Canadians that are watching or are reviewing this, the tech briefing, we got notified very last minute. In fact, we received the link for those MPs less than 20 minutes before the brief actually occurred. I sent a follow-up, in fact, to the parliamentary secretary. Hey, it's at the 45-minute mark. Where is this? We had it. When the questions came up, there was only two people, myself and Mr. Motts, and we were restricted to one question each with a follow-up. I had a pile more, and before we knew it, the tech brief was over. And again, nothing against any of the officials that were part of the brief yesterday, but it was over so quick. And I know, talking to other colleagues, and again, that's my concern here. This amendment was not debated. We'd had that discussion at length on the previous amendments. This wasn't part of the original bill. So we have 330, well, not quite 338 MPs in the House of Commons right now with the resignations. My point is, we had the we have all sorts of our colleagues that represent Canadians right across this country that are still asking us questions. And I think that, I guess, just to go back to the previous point, we do kindly request to the government and to the parliamentary secretary that you do consider offering another technical brief opportunity for all MPs, not just those that have the benefit of our wonderful officials here at the table. So I'll leave my remarks at that, Mr. Chair.
Please. Thank you.
Just for the officials, so it's clear, I mean, we sort of discussed this briefly on Tuesday, and I know it's future, I think, amendments, but as long as you have, this isn't going to require to have an ATT to actually move the part. As long as you have your PAL or our PAL, depending on the firearm, you're good to go, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Ruff, followed by Mr. Cochran.
Thanks, Chair. Look, my question is very simple. I mean, look, I have no issues with the intent behind this amendment at all, and I appreciate the clarification from the officials to Mr. Lloyd's questions around the intent and everything. Has there been a charter statement done specific to this amendment? Because it obviously gets into some very gray, vague areas with all this lawyer stuff that I don't profess to be an expert on.
So no charter statement was done specifically on this offense. The charter statement was tabled back in June of 2021, but we do an analysis of all of the government motions. Again, taking into consideration charter impacts, such as on free speech, in terms of distribution of these types of blueprints. So any charter analysis that would have been done is solicitor-client privilege, but we can say that it wouldn't criminalize merely distributing or publishing, and it would not impact on free speech because you have to have, the person has to have possession with an intent. So
but you are clarifying the charter statement was done on the original bill. This new amendment, it wasn't, but there was analysis done, fully acknowledging you can't share it, but you did, a charter analysis was done on this amendment.
among other analysis that we do on motions, as I mentioned yesterday, gender-based analysis, et cetera, yes, we do charter analysis on these provisions. And, sorry, go ahead. Oh, on these, we always, yes, on every initiative during our policy development.
Thank you.